Hi, I'm Malika Bilal, filling in for Femi OK, and you're in the stream. Today, he spent almost a year in prison and more than 100 days on hunger strike. Meet freed Al Jazeera journalist Abdullah Elshamy. Our guest digital producer, Dan Ning, is here looking out for your live feedback. He'll also be bringing in our Google Plus Hangout members who are going to ask questions of Abdullah. Of course, we'd be remiss, though, if we weren't to mention our other colleagues, Al Jazeera colleagues, in detention still in Egypt. Yes, that's right. There's been an ongoing campaign for the release. You can see pictures of them on my screen here. We have Peter Gresta, Mohammed Fahmy, and Bahar Mohammed. And of course, today we're taking your questions for Abdullah Elshamy. So he was recently released. You can tweet me your questions with the hashtag AJStream. Looking forward to those questions, and we'll get to our conversation with Abdullah in just a moment. But first, here's a look at some of the other hashtags we're following from around the world. Al Jazeera Arabic reporter Abdullah Elshamy was arrested in Egypt while covering protests against then-President Mohamed Morsi in 2013. He was held without any charges for 306 days and only released because of health concerns in June. During his time in prison, he was able to get this video out.
I was doing my job as a reporter, and despite the authorities knowing this, I have been detained for 266 days without any charge and without committing any crime. I record this video after I have reached 106 days of my hunger strike to hold the Egyptian government, the Egyptian judiciary, and the general prosecutor my responsibility if anything ever happens to me.
Al Jazeera journalists Peter Gresta, Mohammed Fahmy, and Bahar Mohammed remain in prison in Egypt. Al Jazeera has dismissed all allegations against them and is calling for their immediate release. And now joining us from our studio in Doha, Abdullah himself. Welcome to the program, Abdullah. Now, I'd like you to take us back to August 14th, 2013. You were covering a sit-in for ousted President Morsi in Cairo's Rabat Square, and that's when security forces moved in to disperse it. And I pulled up a picture on my screen here of what that looked like. According to rights groups, 1,000 people were killed and more than 800 were detained, and you were among them. So what happened to you?
Yeah, actually I was covering for the Rabat Square. I was there since the 5th of July. Because I was asked to come over from where I'm actually based, which is in Nigeria, to cover the political turmoil taking place in the country. And when I went there, I first covered the protests in Tahrir Square, which were pro-Sisi, as in against Morsi. And when I moved to Rabat, I was there almost on a daily basis from the 5th of July up till the the day when the dispersal took place. On that day, I was doing my job just like any other day. Of course, it was not like any other day as well because of the, all the killings and all the fires that were raging everywhere inside the square. At the end of the day, it was about 5 p.m. local time, and I was on my way out because security forces have stormed everywhere by then. I was at the medical center, which is about a 6-block building where most of the bodies were kept. And then when I was on my way out, I was stopped by an army checkpoint, which was on the way to the road that was leading to an exit from the protest. There I was asked to present my identity, and I had only my Egyptian passport, and they thought, well, this was something to doubt because I didn't have my Egyptian ID because I don't really live in Egypt because of my job. And from that point they thought I could be kind of a spy, according to what they were saying to each other, the army officers. And it's from that moment that my detention began.
Were you able to explain to them that you were a journalist, and do you think it would have mattered if they believed you?
I didn't actually think at that moment of mentioning such information to them, because the general atmosphere there, either from the police or the army or even from the citizens who were watching from their balconies, you know, from the different buildings looking above the protest, was not actually a good idea to do at that moment, because later I knew that two of our colleagues who were working for Al Jazeera Mubashir Misr, the Egyptian affiliation of Al Jazeera, were held for about 2 hours and beaten severely before they were left. Of course, for me, there was not an option. I could, you know, kind of try to play that card at that moment, but I don't think if I had mentioned the kind of job I was doing or who I was, it could have helped. Actually, it would have done things worse, and that did really happen when I was moved later to the first jail to which I went. When they knew I was working for Al Jazeera, I had kind of a welcome party, but you know, of course, through physical abuse. Yeah.
Well, a welcome party, though. Can you explain what that is?
Well, in Egypt, either you go to a police station or a prison. You know, of course, as a detainee, you get what they call like a reception or like a welcome party. It mainly aims to, you know, break down your spirits. It kind of gives a message to those detainees who've just arrived that, well, we are the ones in control here as police officers, and for you to kind of live with the situation, you have to bow down to whatever kind of commands or orders we give you. So yeah, that welcome party is mainly, you know, all the officers, either they were senior officers or young officers within the police station or the prison, kind of stand, you know, in two lines and allow people to pass in between and start, you know, hitting them by whatever they have in their hands, either it's the, you know, batons or shoes or whatever they could use. And sometimes it's just up to the mood of the senior officer who is doing the whole thing. You know, it could last for an hour, it could last for 30 minutes. Wow. So yeah, that was the thing I got in person when they knew I was working for Al Jazeera. And that was 4 days later when I was moved to Abu Zabal military prison, which is about 120 kilometers from Cairo. It's the northeast of Cairo. Yeah.
All right, Abdullah, we have a question from someone in our Google Plus Hangout, Anna Day in New York. She's a journalist. Anna, go ahead with your question for Abdullah.
Abdullah, it's very difficult for many of us to imagine the conditions in which you were detained just for being a journalist. I was wondering if you'd be willing to describe not only the conditions you endured, but also the techniques that you used to stick to such a disciplined regimen of protest under such egregious conditions.
Well, actually, the conditions in Egyptian jails is below. I mean, I wouldn't say, you know, bad. I think that word wouldn't describe it enough. But the conditions are terrible. Either it's when it comes to medical care or basic human rights like good food or ventilation, or even where people sleep. They have a very limited space. You could end up like 20 people in less than, you know, between 8 to 10 square meters. So these are mainly the conditions. Of course, there is the physical abuse, which is you know, usually every now and then, and this is also at the end a very common practice in Egyptian jails. My condition as a journalist didn't really make a lot of change. Of course, at the beginning there was the kind of reception that I just mentioned, which was involving physical torture, but later when they, you know, when things calmed down and the pressure was starting to build up for the campaign, they were kind of you know, they hesitated before they did anything with me, but it was mostly psychological torture. But nonetheless, I believe my condition, I wouldn't say applies to other journalists or other detainees, because I think I was a kind of a special condition because of you know, what I have done the hunger strike. And I think if it's about journalism, we still have almost 15 journalists in Egyptian jails, of which our 3 colleagues, Bahir and Peter and Muhammad, are there. So yeah, the conditions wouldn't even fit for animals. So I say it's very terrible. Yeah.
All right. So
Abdullah, I have a question. Sorry.
Go ahead, Jillian. Go ahead.
All right. I was wondering why you felt the need to go on your hunger strike.
I think at one moment they thought that if I carried on with this and I got to a point where my death was imminent, they didn't really want to take the consequences of that. They didn't want to hold themselves responsible for whatever might come after it. So I think that was one reason, and of course the campaign that was going on outside, and at the same time the idea of them moving me to a solitary confinement in a maximum security prison, which was for the last 37 days of my detention. I think that was the turning point in which things started escalating up and led them to bow for pressure and release me.
All right, so Abdullah, we have a question on Twitter. Al-Haji wants to know, would you have been released from prison if you had not decided to go on a hunger strike? Do you think the hunger strike was the decisive thing that changed your situation? No. Can you explain why?
Yeah, I think it was very decisive because I mean, I didn't start my hunger strike except you know, when I got to the fact that justice was not taking place in Egypt, either for my own case or for other people. And when I have spent almost 5 months, and I was just, you know, every 45 days going for renewal of my detention, and nothing was happening. But I think it was the hunger strike, because apart from that, when I was trying to go through the legal or the normal way of getting myself released, it was not working. So yeah, I think it was very decisive, and I think it was a very important factor.
You know, Abdullah, while you were in prison, there were messages of support really rolling in from all around the world. I'm going to play on my screen here just some pictures of people that took part in this Free AJ Staff campaign, you know, showing selfies of themselves, posting that, using the hashtag. Were you aware of this international support, and what was your contact with the outside world?
Well, actually, I've gone through 4 prisons. When the campaign started, I was in the 3rd prison, which is called Tora Istiqbal or Tora Reception. It's one of 8 prisons inside the Tora prison complex. And at that point, I used to get newspapers, and of course, I used to get information from my family and from different people, either during my visits or, you know, through whatever news we could get, if it was a radio or you know, a paper. But when I was moved to the maximum security prison, that was totally broken down. There was nothing really, you know, coming at all. But I did, of course, get those support messages before I was moved to this maximum security prison, and it was very moving. It was one of the greatest factors in keeping me up and making me feel that the struggle I was, you know, fighting for, it was worth all the trouble.
We have another question from Kamal in Copenhagen. Kamal, go ahead with your question. Kamal, can you unmute yourself, please? Thank you.
Abdullah, Abdullah, you as a journalist who got arrested and detained and then harassed, did you lose ever courage at any point in time, or thought better of criticizing the rulers? Did you ever lose hope?
Well, I think there were those points at which I felt that, well, this was the end of my life, because when for the first time I am sent to jail, and I thought, well, I will be there for almost 20 or 30 years, as in like a life sentence. But I mean, just like any other human, I used to lose hope at some point. But with all the support from my family and from friends and from people all over, you know, all around the world through the Free AJ Staff campaign, I think that was helping me a lot. And but when I was moved to the maximum security prison in the last month of my detention, I think my morals were really down for a lot of time, because I was staying on my own. I was cut from the outside world, but I tried to, you know, keep hope, and I think both spiritually and kind of making good thoughts about the future, I think that helped. I used to kind of give myself that hope by, you know, already planning for the future that was not very possible at that moment.
Right.
And I think that really helped. Yeah.
Well, Abdullah, you mentioned the support of your family, and so I pulled up on my screen here a beautiful picture. This is a picture of you and your wife, KHALED, and this is after your release, and this is your Twitter profile picture. Actually, you hadn't been married all that long before you were imprisoned, about a year. So how did this change your relationship with your wife?
Well, actually, before I went to jail, we were of course married for about a year, but it was mostly, I was mostly away for, you know, going around because of my work, and I believe we were actually not married as impractically because of all those circumstances. But when I went to jail, and my wife was very supportive, you know, because of that, I think this really kind of turned our relation kind of a 360 degrees. It was totally up and down, and now when we were you know, when we joined together again, I think this has given us even more believe in ourselves, that from the very first moment when we got together as a couple, I think this was the right decision for both of us, and it has actually made each of us believe in each other, and let us be more decisive in that cause, the cause for freedom, that you know, and the struggle for the press freedom and for the freedom of everyone, and even our own social relation has grown stronger and a lot better.
Mm-hmm. So Abdullah, we have a question here on Facebook. Usman wants to know, do you feel demoralized and discouraged from continuing the journalism profession? So Abdullah, will you continue as a journalist?
Sure, definitely. This is what I am planning to do, and I think if I ever go back in time to that point when I had to go to Egypt and cover events there, I think I will do it for an unlimited number of time. Yeah.
You know, Abdullah, in talking about your life out of prison, after prison, and you know, we're very happy that you're out, but are there lingering effects of your hunger strike, of your time in there, psychologically, physically? I pulled up on my screen here a picture. This is a before and after, and it's quite striking. And some reports say that at one time you'd lost a third of your body weight. So are there lingering physical scars, psychological scars? How are you health-wise?
Well, actually, since I came out of prison, I had about two full checkups of my body, and the initial findings were that both my kidney and liver are having some severe effects of the hunger strike, but by time they will be able to recover, going through the kind of medication I follow at the moment. And doctors were also mentioning that this doesn't really show up the full side effect of the hunger strike unless we keep these checkups for 6 continuous months. So I think I would say, yeah, I'm in a good condition now, but I can't really say if I'm 100% fit unless I pass through these 6 months phase. And speaking about the psychological side, I think, of course, this has left a scar inside me. It has left inside my wife, my parents, my brothers, every close person to me and my wife. And for me personally, I think up till now there's a moment every now and then I wake up and I kind of think that, well, this is all a dream I haven't woke from, and I would put in my mind that a prison warden would come and shout and ask me to get back to my cell and lock the door and all of that. So I don't really like to keep doors or windows locked for a long time. This is one of actually the main things I try not to go through. Mm-hmm. But I think I mean, of course they say time does heal everything, but right. I think this will stay for some time before I can really realize it. Yeah.
All right, Abdullah, we have another question from Mina Fayek in Cairo. Mina is a blogger. Go ahead, Mina.
Yeah, well, Abdullah, you mentioned future and hope. I'd like to ask you about the future. Given the current situation in Egypt, how do you see the future for journalists with all the repression, dissent curbing, and the media having one narrative, one pro-regime narrative. What should the journalists do? How do you see the future for them? How everyone who believed in the revolution, in the January 25th revolution, should act?
I think, first of all, the future is dark and grim when it comes to press freedom in Egypt, because this is not really about what kind of ideology or affiliation you as a person or an Egyptian really, would cling to, but it's more about freedom in general. Either it's freedom mainly or press freedom. Things are very bad either now or how it's looking in the future. And I think we as a generation who have gone through this revolution, the unyet complete one, the not completed one, I think we're still trying to battle the fact that we may have lost almost everything. This is how it looks like on ground, but I think our generation would have another comeback, and well, that may take some time looking at the fact on the ground in Egypt. But I think journalists, especially young journalists, have a very big task in changing what people think about the revolution, and battling all the mischiefs and the lies that have been said about the revolution in the local media. And this is, I think, it will be the starting point to create that awareness that will make people really believe in revolution as a life course, not just like an event they attend and leave when they don't like.
Right, because the revolution doesn't end. I hear one more question from our Hangout, but we're running out of time, and so I want to leave with this question, Abdullah. You're mentioning the younger generation of journalists. It hasn't been an easy time for journalists. On my screen here, I have the number of journalists attacked in 2013. 2,160, and that's from Reporters Without Borders. So, Abdullah, if you could send a message to your 3 colleagues from Al Jazeera who are still detained, what would that message be?
Well, I'll tell them that to never lose hope, because it's at that point that really life doesn't matter anymore when you lose the hope of regaining your freedom at one point. And my very message to them is to keep together as one, because inside prison usually they try to break up people or try to break their unity in order to manipulate them. So they'll have to keep strong and have to believe in that they've never done anything wrong, and that when this is all over, it's their own is the guys who put them in prison that would regret what they've done, not really them. And that I am proud of them, and I'm hoping that this ordeal will end very soon for them.
All right, so we have one tweet, and just to wrap things up, we have a tweet from the community. Lorato says, "I'm beyond elated to hear you've been freed. Your courage and strength has indeed brought you home." So that's the last from our community for the show. And
those will keep coming in. You can use hashtag AJStream. We'll also have more questions from our Hangout for Abdullah Elshamy. Remember, you can find the latest on the 3 journalists detained still in Egypt: Peter Gresta, Mohammed Fahmy, and Bahar Mohammed. That's on our website, stream.aljazeera.com. You can stay with us more with Abdullah in the post show, that website. Now, on our next show, what does getting drenched with a bucket of ice water have to do with charity for a rare disease? We'll be looking at the debate generated by a viral trend that I'm sure by now you've all seen or heard about. That's the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. Until then, we'll see you online. Welcome back to the Post Show. We're speaking with Al Jazeera reporter Abdullah Elshamy, who was freed from an Egyptian prison after spending more than 300 days without charge. Let's get right back to the discussion with him and our Google Plus Hangout. Right before we ended the main portion of the TV show, we heard a noise from Kamal in our Hangout. Kamal wanted to ask a follow-up question. Please go ahead.
Abdullah, journalists should always be proud that their influence have made the authorities in the whole region to target them. It means we have had great impacts on masses and uncover the authorities' corruption and terrible politics. So what's your message for journalists like me in the conflict areas? Do you think there's any weapon stronger than keyboards and cameras to defend human rights, justice and democracy?
Well, I think the battle for changing people's attitudes and making them more aware about how things are working in their own countries and how they do have the right to speak out loud and change their governments and, you know, make their life a lot better. I think this is the most important battle. I think words are the most lethal weapon in the whole battle. I think journalists in Egypt and in the region have to really carry on with this struggle no matter what happens, because you might not yield the impact at once, but it will initially hit back, and there will be that change. It might be in 1 year or 5 years or even a century, but that will be a good beginning. And I think they should fight and carry on no matter what conditions or what trouble they go through.
All right, so I know that Anna Day also had another question. Anna, go ahead.
Abdullah, I wanted to ask if you had any other recommendations of what journalists and allies around the world can do to raise awareness. We know there are these hashtag campaigns, but what other recommendations do you have?
Well, I think journalists should use the moment that we are going through, the Free AJ Staff moment and this campaign, in order to make sure that no other journalist is put in prison. I know this is kind of difficult or maybe impossible at the moment, looking at the different conditions we see around the world, but I think if because of the unprecedented reaction that came from the Free AJ Staff campaign, journalists around the world should go through making legislations in order to protect themselves and their colleagues, and to let people be willing to participate in the protection of the freedom of the media and the freedom of speech, and they should stand with the oppressed, not stand with the strong side, because the oppressed rely on them, on telling the people what happened. They shouldn't really be involved into changing people's opinions or minds. They should just tell them what's happening and let them decide on their own, so they can really build a free-thinking society that really can change and not be affected by any other people.
Abdullah, you're in Doha right now in Qatar, but are you allowed to go back to Egypt? You still have family there, and as does your wife. Is that correct?
Well, my wife is with me here in Doha, but my mother and my brothers are in Egypt, as well as my in-laws, and I think at the moment it's impossible for me to return, because I would put myself into detention again, because still speaking about the legal side, I'm still I'm still facing the same charge that I was detained with, and I could, if I went back to Egypt, be put back in prison. So yes, I'm not planning on going back to Egypt in the near future.
So Abdullah, we have another question on Twitter from Musa here. You can see it says, how did Abdullah make his prison video? Who helped him? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
And of course, that's the video that we've shown a couple of times during this show.
Yeah.
Yes. I actually had a kind of an agreement with one of the prison officers, one of the very lower ranks of the prison, through which he was able to get me a phone when he was coming back from his vacation or his usual off days, while he was not working, and he was able to give me that phone. and I did film the video about a week before I was sent to the maximum security prison, and then I was able to send it back out through smuggling it with a family of one of my prison inmates, and this is how it got to be on air. And the condition for putting that on air was if I either got if my health got to a very bad level, or if I did disappear, like what happened when I was sent to the maximum security prison.
All right, so we have another question from Jillian in the Hangout. Jillian, go ahead.
Hi, I wanted to know how you feel towards Egypt now, and has your opinion changed of your home country now that you've seen the darker political side of the country?
Well, I haven't really been, to Egypt most of my time. I was actually born outside of Egypt, and I have been raised in Africa, more specifically in Nigeria, where I later joined Al Jazeera as a reporter for them. But of course, when the revolution took place in 2011, as every aspiring Egyptian have actually wanted their country to be, I had that hope that things have changed and that maybe I would move to Egypt and live there. But after my detention, I think looking at the conditions in which the country is really passing by at the moment, I think I might have changed my thoughts to live in the country at the moment. But in the end, this is my, this is where I belong. This is my, this is the country where my parents come from. But yet, I would prefer myself to be more of a global citizen, because I would like to call myself a citizen of every country of this planet, not necessarily just where my origins are.
Yeah.
Abdullah, we have time for.
Sisi? Sorry.
Go ahead, Jillian.
Do you support Sisi then?
Sorry?
Do you support Sisi?
Do I support what?
Sisi?
She's asking about your support for General Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, the president of Egypt. Of course, you're also a journalist, and so
no, I don't.
We know that you're journalistic.
I don't support Sisi, and this is not because of any kind of political background or ideology. I don't support Sisi because he has got back the country so much back to the past, and I think also he is making a very, he's making a very bad person as a president in how the things are going in the country now.
Abdullah, personally, in your personal life, what is next for you? What comes after this?
Well, I am planning on writing a book about this experience of mine, hopefully to be released before the end of the year. And for the meantime, I want to dedicate my life, or most of my time, for the cause of journalists. For working with journalists around the world into making press freedom more and more, important for regimes and for people, as well as bonding a lot more with my wife and my family, and doing a lot of travels in order to catch up on what's been going on for the last 11 months in which I've been in prison. But yeah, I'm kind of feeling that I have been born once again, and I want to kind of try and do everything that I have, a new person in life does. So, but mainly for now, it's reading and traveling and writing the book, as well as joining the cause for press freedom.
Well, we'll look forward to the release of the book and wish you well with all of your future endeavors. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. So I want to thank Abdullah Elshamy and our Google Plus Hangout, Mina Fayek, Kamal Chamani, Jillian Pecora, and Anna Day. Now remember, you can find the latest on the 3 Al Jazeera journalists still imprisoned in Egypt on our webpage. Now, on the next show, what does getting drenched with a bucket of ice water have to do with charity for a rare disease? We'll be looking at the debate generated by a viral trend that I'm sure by now you've all seen or heard about. That's the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. Until then, we'll see you online.